Everything around us has evolved. Our planet, Earth, has evolved. Our sun has evolved. The continents on this planet have evolved. Everything has evolved. Human beings and all life has evolved. So many of us believe in one or more gods. So has God also evolved over time? The answer to this is very interesting, and watch this video till the end to know it. Hi everyone, this is Ghalib. You're watching me on YouTube. So the idea of God seems very natural to all of us. And we think that this idea has been around forever. Before human beings were there, the idea of God was already there. This is the basic theology taught by many religions around the world, especially the Abrahamic religions. They say that God or the idea of God was there before everything else. But this is extremely far away from the truth, because as human beings, we have existed on this planet as Homo sapiens for more than 200,000 years. It's a very, very long time, extremely long time. And during this time, we have seen so many things. But being an amnesiac species, we don't remember those. We only learned how to talk about 50,000 years ago, when the speech centers in our brain evolved and we started to convey ideas through our tongues and our vocal channels. And that is when we started to convey messages, and we started to depict mental pictures, and we started to communicate with our other Homo sapiens. And that is when we understood what the other one was thinking or saying, and made other people understand what we were thinking. What was the mental picture or the imagination that was going on in our minds? And this is the time around which the idea of a god might have emerged, or idea of religion. 100,000 years ago, when people were burying some things with the dead, and some people kind of perceived that there was an idea of an afterlife from this. But the overall idea of religion emerges after we develop language, because then and only then we were able to communicate complex ideas to each other. So what were the first gods? As anthropologists have perceived that in the ancient times, in the extremely ancient times, in the times between 35,000 to 50,000 years ago, people were usually worshipping, or people were thinking of forces of nature as God. Rain was a god, thunder was a god, water was a god, earthquakes were god, plants were gods, and this was happening. But the first idea of a deity emerges around somewhere between 35 to 37,000 years ago, when we start to discover these small figurines carved out of limestone in shape of a woman whose breasts and other organs have been exaggerated to represent that this is a fertile woman who would bear many children. You can see the picture of this Venus mother goddess here. And this is the oldest figurine that we discover. And this is a depiction of a goddess, maybe associated to fertility in women, that women may be used to keep these, or women used to worship these, because everything else around us at that time, if we wanted rain, then we would pray to the rain god. If we wanted river to give us more fish, we would pray to the river. If we wanted plants to give us more fruits, we will pray to the trees. So this is what we were doing. But for fertility, for a woman to bear children, and at that time women would have definitely, the risk during childbirth, it's still extreme. At that time, it would be even more extreme. On the other hand, the complications that women had, there was no, because even today, if a woman develops some complications, then C-section is the only solution and that can solve it. But at that time, there was no possibility of that. Women used to bear children through a lot of pain. And next, through the winters and the harshness of the environment during the Ice Age, it would have been a formidable task, not only to give birth, but to raise children in that difficult time. So, Mother Goddess, or the goddess of fertility, would have been really very important. And we do find her figurines all in Eurasia and Asia and many other places continuously for the next more than, next 20,000 years, even more than that, 25,000 years. So even within the last 10,000 years, we do find some figurines that are there. But when human beings settled down because of the agricultural revolution, then things started to change rapidly. And now things were becoming very different. Human beings were living in a totally different world. People were living in small villages, and maybe towns had started to emerge. And in those villages, people were doing agriculture. And those villages were mostly located near the rivers or in those places where there would be, dependable rain for agriculture. So people started to settle together. People were living together for the first time. People had settled down for the first time, because it is believed that hunter-gatherers would relocate a lot, especially during the Ice Age when the ice sheets would move, and during the winter when the cold would be extremely harsh. People would migrate before that to warmer climate areas to save themselves from the cold of the Ice Age. So for the first time after the Ice Age, when so many places became available for agriculture and people started to develop agriculture, people settled, and now a different kind of challenge emerged for the human beings, because there were towns and villages and maybe some ancient cities and they were producing grain and other agricultural products, and the numbers were also increasing very much. And when the numbers were increasing, and every year people would have somewhat dependable source of food, things were changing. People were settling. So when the people settled, let's say one village did not get a very good crop this time, and the next village did get a good crop, then in the forced by nature or forced by hunger or starvation, one was supposed to attack the other. And when this happened, then the other village or other town would also defend itself against the other. And then that is the time when, chiefs and warlords became very important, because they were the protectors of those villages and places. And they would protect their place from the invaders or attackers, and they would also invade other places in search of, agricultural goods or also other things. So then men started to become very important, and then towns had rulers, and those rulers had the representatives, or there was a council under those rulers. And from there the idea of pantheons of gods emerged. And in 1800 BC in Mesopotamia, in the Fertile Crescent, Marduk was the god, and all the other Mesopotamian gods were under him. So we first come to an idea of a ruler god in the image of a ruler man. And then this idea goes across. We see pantheons of God everywhere. There is the Canaanite pantheon, there is the Arab pantheon, there is the Greek pantheon, then there is the Indian pantheon, and we see some deities who are male deities who are rulers over that. So patriarchy had also become very strong. Men had become much stronger than women once they settled down, because Once they were looting the other villages of grain and other commodities, they were also looting them of women as well. So males became very, very powerful. So the idea of this powerful male god emerged in place of that old Venus mother goddess that was responsible for fertility, perhaps. So now God was changing. God had already changed from a female to a male. First from the forces of nature to female and then to male. And now Marduk had already emerged in 1800, and then in 14th century BC in Egypt the first monotheism emerged when Akhenaten decreed that only Aten should be the god that should be worshipped. That was the first monotheism in the world, and he rejected all other gods. And maybe it had also influenced the one group of Canaanites, those that we know as Judaic people or Jews today, that they also adopted this idea. And out of the Canaanite pantheon, where El was the chief god and Asherah was his wife and Baal and Yahweh were his sons, they merged El and Yahweh into a single deity, and they proclaimed the most important monotheism that the world had ever seen. And even today we are seeing that. So this is how the Abrahamic God was born. That El and Yahweh were merged together, and they became the single deity for the Jewish people. And Jewish people did not worship any other gods. But it continued like this for a little while. But we know that even Old Testament of today does not deny that there are no other gods. But they say that El or Yahweh is the most powerful God and he has created this universe. But there are other gods as well. This is what the Old Testament believes in. Then the next stage comes in where the idea of a god and a man is also merged. The idea of demigod is taken to a next level, that is in Christianity and also in Hellenistic religion, where there were a lot of demigods which were sons of both God and human beings. But then Jesus becomes the kind of son of God, and this was also a phase in the transition towards this God that we see today in our world. And the Trinitarian God is there, but Islam takes a turn backwards, and Islam believes in a truly monotheistic God, and Islam says that there is no other God but Allah, and that is the only God. So where did it start? It started with nature worship, then with this female deity being worshipped, then the god becomes male, but there are male and female both types of gods. And then the monotheism starts, and the Jews adopt the monotheism. And then later on there is this mixture of Hellenistic worldview or Hellenistic religion, which believes in gods and sons of gods, and this is intermingled with the Jewish idea of a single god. And now we have a single god with three different personalities, and one of them being the son of that god. But Islam takes a turn backwards, and it takes true monotheism back again. So this is the history of world religions. But there are many other religions in the world that are still polytheistic, like Hinduism and maybe some other religions as well. But this is how God evolved. God was powerless condition of the people of the old world and their attempt to understanding how the world worked. So when they did not understand, they started to associate different personalities with the forces of nature. And when these forces of nature, they were worshipping them, then it became more, religion became more intertwined with the control. And how the control became important, because you wanted to control the towns and places. And there were patron gods for cities like Athens and Sparta. And people viewed that if two towns or two cities like Sparta and Athens were at war with each other, so the Athenians would definitely discourage the worship of Ares, because Ares was the patron god of Sparta, and the Spartans would discourage the worship of Athena, because Athena was the patron goddess of Athens. So I think this would have also led to a stride towards monotheism, because any ruler would, and to uniformity of religion in a place which you needed to defend or which you needed to manage. Because if the people belong to the same religion, they would be more loyal to the ruler. But if the ruler belonged to a different religion and people belong to a different religion, then they wouldn't be loyal to him. So the rulers not only made sure that people would follow the same religion that they were, but they also made sure that most of the people living under their power would follow the same religion. And it would be much more easier for them to maintain rule like this. And throughout the history, we have seen that it were the rulers who would encourage one religion against another religion. And even some of the rulers have contributed a lot to the invention of religions, like Hammurabi did. The Hammurabi Code is basically one way of a ruler using religion or God to enforce his law. Similarly, in the Jewish world, it were the Israelite kings that were promoting Al, but on the other hand, it were the Judaic kings that were promoting Yahweh, and later on it was all combined. Christianity has a big footprint of Constantine on it, and the later kings which became Christian and thought that Christianity would be beneficial for them. Even Islam also came into being because of the political struggle between the Umayyads and the Abbasids. So gods not only evolved because of our own evolution and the evolution of our ideas, but gods also evolved because of the power struggles between human beings throughout the history. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You can also support me on Patreon. The link to my Patreon is in the description of this video.